You're listening to the Station 71 podcast with your hosts, Mario,
Beth,
and Brian.
So, this week we are going to take a look at some attractions at Disney World that are no more, and we're going to do this kind of similarly to our Extinct one, I think. Just go down the list of like a couple attractions and talk about some that we would have liked to explore, some that we got to explore, all that fun stuff. But let's start this week off, as always, with the news. And do you guys want to take over, because you guys super out-prepped me on this
I think this was all Beth.
Yeah, I can go over the news. So I'll start. I think we'll do from least infuriating to most infuriating, maybe.
Well, when you put it that way.
Well, I guess least infuriating would be that the cast member costumes are going to be changing at Animal Kingdom beginning April 22nd, which I thought was interesting that it mentioned the Discovery Island and Oasis cast members will have a mix and match system with selectable elements, so they'll have some level of choice in what they're wearing, which I think is probably a first, if I'm not mistaken.
That's really interesting. I think that is a first.
So I would be excited to have some amount of customization as a cast member. After that, we have a new nighttime after-hours hard ticket event is coming to Typhoon Lagoon. It's going to be called H20 Glow Nights, and it's going to be Toy Story themed, inspired by the Pixar short Partysaurus Rex. It's going to be taking place Thursdays and Saturdays starting June 21st through August 11th. So it's going to be $55 for adults and $50 for children.
I was really excited about this, just reading the title, and then that got knocked down a peg once I actually clicked on the link. It just seems like for 3 hours, I love the water parks, which is why I was initially excited, but when I look at paying $55 for 3 hours at the water park, I don't really know if that is a good price point.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you this, because I'm not a water park person, so I'm automatically out of this one. But what would make this worth it for you? Like a time extension or a price cut? Because I think $55 for 3 hours isn't awful.
It's not bad, and I'm going to wait to, I'll reserve most of my judgment until I see more of the specifics about this, because if it is like some of the other after-hours events where not everything's open, it's going to be hard for me to say that that's justifiable. I mean, there's a lot to do with the parks, don't get me wrong, at Typhoon Lagoon especially. But, one of the things that I was thinking about is I'm wondering if they're going to keep the wave pool open, because I would think that it would kind of be a safety risk to have lifeguards having to monitor people in the dark in the wave pool. So, stuff like that, if they're not going to have all the rides open, I don't know if I would want to pay $55 for this.
Have you ever been at night? I don't know how late they stay open.
They usually
generally
close pretty early. I'm wanting to say it's usually around 5 or 6, depending on the season. But no, I can't remember ever being there late.
I imagine that they would have some sort of lighting set up to kind of reduce the safety risks.
Yeah, I would hope so.
But yeah, considering that, some of the hard ticket events like the early morning magic and stuff, it's like, I think $79 a person, and you get breakfast, and it's at Magic Kingdom. I think that sounds like a better value to me.
Oh yeah, definitely.
But I've never been to the water park, so I'm not familiar with how cool it would be or not. All right. So next up, the iconic Adventureland snack, the Citrus Swirl, has officially been replaced by what they're calling the Orange Swirl. So from what I was reading, the new recipe is sweeter and so less tart than the previous, And the reason for the name change is that the orange soft serve is now non-dairy and vegan, so it makes it illegal to include citrus in the title, which doesn't really make sense to me because citrus and dairy don't have anything to do with each other, but that is what the article said.
Pretty odd.
Yeah,
I don't know how I feel about that.
I'm wondering, like, what was in it before that made it not vegan? Like, obviously soft serve ice cream is got dairy in it, but just the orange part, I thought it was just basically frozen orange juice.
I don't know.
But
Yeah, I don't know. I think you would be the only one that would know that answer.
yeah, I don't know. But I don't know if you guys have ever had the citrus swirl, but I thought it was pretty good. It's not as good as the Dole Whip, obviously, but I did think that it was a little too tart, so I think I'd probably like this new recipe a little better. So I'm excited to try it. All right, now for the thing.
The big one.
The thing that makes all the feels.
All right, this is going to be one that we're going to end up talking about for a little bit too. So
That's why I saved it for last. Effective for reservations made March 21st and beyond, Disney will now begin charging resort guests for overnight parking. So it's going to be $13 a night for value resorts, $19 a night for moderates, $24 for deluxe and deluxe villas, and $33 for deluxe valet.
So, before we dive into this, before we even talk about it, I want to start by saying that we all kind of discussed this earlier, and Brian and I are not affected by this at all, and it's still kind of upsetting to both of us.
Yeah.
I'm hardly affected by this. Like, I've been affected by it once. That, like, I would have been affected by it once had it been in action when I stayed, but, like, I typically don't stay on property, so it's not really effective to me either, but it's extremely infuriating to me.
Okay, so that being said, go ahead, Brian. You say what you're going to say.
Well, it's on the subject. I'm just going to say that, in my personal opinion, this might be the most blatant cash grab that I have heard of Disney doing this for.
Right? It's like, these people are already paying, tons of money to stay at your resort.
Yes.
And now you're going to make them pay to have their car there?
And I don't even understand what Disney could come out and say to try to justify this.
It's like, to me, it's saying, hey, pay for a flight out here, and then you have to use our minivan service.
Mm-hmm.
Well, okay, so here's the thing. A lot of the resorts, this is where my problem is. A lot of the resorts that you stay at on property, you pay the premium to stay there, obviously. They're all fairly expensive. Even the value ones are pretty pricey for a hotel. But adding that extra parking charge, it becomes, can I stay the extra day or do I drive down and keep my car? So that's where I'm kind of at with this right now. I know there's a little bit more detail that we can discuss about it, but just from that idea alone, like, you think about it, you stay, I guess, like 5 nights at a moderate, $19 for that parking per day, you're looking at almost another night in the resort, or, whatever. There's a bunch of things that you can add on for that price.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, I mean, I get it because a lot of hotels charge for parking. And honestly, that's not a bad price for parking. I've seen it way higher at plenty other places. But when you factor in the cost of the Disney trip already, plus the added up cost of this, it's such a premium that's pricing a lot of people out.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't understand how Disney thought that it was a good idea to charge, to say this charge is for parking. I would almost be happier if they just raised all the resort prices this much. But for them to just blatantly say that, yes, we're going to charge you to park in the parking lots now, I don't know. It just seems like they would honestly have better PR if they just went up this amount in rates for each night.
Yeah, just call it a resort fee.
Yeah.
I would be much more okay with that, because then it doesn't feel like you're paying for something that you've never had to pay for before. I mean, you would, but that at least they could justify it as like, well, it helps with the pool maintenance or something like that.
Yeah.
But and like to me, it doesn't make sense unless Disney's like in cahoots with the airlines, which they probably are, honestly. But it's just, I could almost understand it to charge for resorts that have like limited parking, or like really like hot ticket resorts where people go and have dinner and go to, I don't know, events at like the Polynesian or something like that. Like, I still think it's ridiculous to have to pay to park your car when you're staying at a hotel, but I could almost understand it for places like that. But it's just like, Port Orleans, when I was there, there's like so much parking. It's like you don't struggle for parking at all, because if anybody's going to visit just to like hang out there, they're not going to be really parking in the same places as the guests, or at least not where I was staying in the mansions. But I don't know. I've stayed at a lot of resorts in the Orlando area, and I've never had to pay for parking at any of them, and I always drive. I've never flown.
So I want to also take a moment to talk about some other things too, because there are some other changes, not just the pricing. I did look this up. They're also including the valet parking, which is available at select deluxe resorts and deluxe villas for $33 per night, which is tax included. That's fine. Complimentary parking is going to be available to guests staying at Fort Wilderness campsites. Each campsite provides one parking space per campsite. Guests with disabilities are going to have designated parking spaces available through Walt Disney World, but you have to have a valid disability parking permit. Vacation club members will not be charged for standard overnight self-parking when staying at a DVC deluxe villa, regardless of whether they use their vacation points or another form of payment. Members will also not be charged to park when using vacation points to stay at Walt Disney World Resort hotels. And complimentary self-parking is available while enjoying select dining, shopping, entertainment, and recreation experiences at Walt Disney World hotels. So there is the day parking that's still available. That is a nice thing to consider for, I guess, like local people. If you're going to want to go like resort hop and, go shopping or have dinner somewhere, you can park your car there. But this is pricing per night. I did want to just kind of throw that little tidbit in there, because we can talk prices all night and everything, but there's still a little bit more detail to it.
I mean, honestly, to me, and like I said, this is coming from somebody who has only stayed on property one time, so if anything, I would be affected by the reverse more so. I think it would make more sense to charge day people to park, here's your, I don't know, 3-5 hour parking pass, so you can eat at, Chef Mickey's or whatever. But it's just like, I don't know, it just feels like a slap in the face to people staying on property. It's like that was supposed to be one of the, like, I don't know, one of the perks of staying on property is that you have your car, but you don't need it.
And I think off of that, that's where a lot of the issues come for them needing to charge for parking, is like people, you come in, you're staying at a Disney resort for a day, or you're even staying off property. You book a dining reservation, you get that free parking at the hotel. You can leave your car there and, walk over to the resort or take Disney transportation. And, it's, I don't know. I think that a lot of the upcharges that we're seeing from this are from abuse in the system. And I don't want to, like, place the blame all on that, but I think that it's kind of a thing to think about.
I think that the main reason that this is happening is not even to collect revenue from this, but it's to keep people from bringing a car, which keeps them on Disney property for their entire trip.
That's also a fair assumption. But if you think about it from the reverse thing, like, yeah, it does kind of hinder them a little bit. There's so many other ways to get off of Disney property. And I think at one point we should probably do a whole show on, like, traveling Walt Disney World and, transportation and stuff like that, because we could easily fill an episode with that. But I think that is a very good reason behind that.
Yeah, I just, I don't know. Every time I go to Orlando, I consider like, hey, maybe we should fly, because it's like, I don't know, the flight's like an hour and a half versus a 7-hour drive. But it's always not only a price point where it's, flying is significantly more expensive than paying, $100 worth of gas for both of, me and my boyfriend to both go. But it's just, I like the freedom of having my car. And while there are plenty of ways to get on and off of property, like, none of them are free. Having your car there, even if you rent a car, you're still paying to rent one. And now you're going to have to pay to park it.
Right. Well, okay, so I hate that I'm going to say this, and I this is going to sound super entitled of me, but it's times like these that make me really happy that I've never really had the option to drive. Obviously, I know you guys know how far out I am, but it's like a 20-minute drive or 20-hour drive for me. Wow, wish it was 20 minutes. It's like a 20-hour drive for me. Like, I would take a whole day driving down there and a whole day driving back just out of my vacation for that. So having a flight that's 2 hours long, like, it's great. But obviously, in a situation like mine where I'm coming from, like, the opposite end of this coast, like, it works out great either way. Even if I were to, let's say, want to go to Universal one day, take an Uber or, something, another rental car service, like even a taxi, and it would be significantly cheaper than, keeping a car on property and paying for gas to drive it down and all that stuff. So in, like, my situation, I'm not super affected, but this still does bother me a lot.
Yeah, and I guess another part of it is that maybe I'm coming at it from a perspective, as someone who's been a lot of times, obviously, because, when I'm there, obviously I want to spend as much time as I can in the parks, but also, like, my best friend lives there, so I want to hang out with him and go to places that aren't Disney, go to local places. Like, there's a video game bar that we like to go to, and it has nothing to do with Disney. So I don't know, just coming at it from that perspective as someone who's not really local but goes enough to kind of feel local, it really, like, this whole thing just really grinds my gears.
Well, and that's the other thing, like, from an opposite perspective, like, obviously, we all go to Disney a lot. We all know that there's stuff outside of Disney to do in Florida. If you're in that mindset of the only thing in Florida is Disney, like, this really isn't going to hurt you too much.
Right. Maybe that's what Disney wants. It's like, don't even think about what else you could be doing. Find something else Disney related to do.
I mean, there's plenty to do there, so it's not like it's impossible. But that's another topic for another day.
Right.
So are we ready to dive into the actual topic this week? Because we've spent almost 20 minutes on this.
I knew it was going to take a minute.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of feeling behind that one. I think it's worth it to note that every time Disney releases a new upcharge, they release a new, like, premium per se, or charge for something that was previously free. There's going to be a lot of emotion behind it. And obviously everyone's going to get upset, so that's important to note. But real quick, I just remembered something on that topic. I saw a tweet today that was really funny, and I can't remember who tweeted it, but it said something like, the reason that Disney's trying to exclude people from parking at their resorts is so they have more land for the upcoming Dinoland USA expansion. And I just really wanted to share that with you guys because that's my exact feelings on it.
Fantastic.
Chester and Hester take over all of Walt Disney World.
Oh my gosh.
That will be the fifth gate.
I
would never go there.
And I guess one last thing before we move away from the topic is that I guess my thought process is there's some Disney executive that was thinking real hard about this, and they're like, well, those people who stay on property, when they drive their cars to the parks, they don't have to pay for parking. So how do we get a little extra money out of them for having a car?
Yep.
So that's just, I don't know. it just seems skeezy to me, and I don't like all the upcharges. But
like I said, anytime that something comes out where there's going to be a premium or something that was previously free gets a charge for it, there's going to be outrage. It's going to be expected.
yeah.
So let's talk extinct Disney attractions. This week we want to kind of just touch on some attractions that aren't part of Walt Disney World, some stuff that, we wish we got to experience, or things that maybe we got to experience. We're all kind of like Disney history buffs a little bit here, if you haven't noticed. So we like to kind of look to the past of Walt Disney World and, talk about some stuff that we've read about that maybe we got to experience. And I kind of want to take this point of the show to open it up to anyone listening. If you got to experience any of these attractions and you have memories about them, share it. We want to hear about it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that's also a good point to kind of bring up why we're doing this episode in the first place, was from a listener email asking us about a specific attraction that is now extinct.
Real quick, should we, I guess, read the email for people who didn't hear it? Did we read it already?
We did read it at the end last week.
We read it last week, yeah.
All right, well, go listen to last week's episode if you want to hear the email.
I mean, we can go over that. We can go over that. The thing that kind of started this, I guess, because last week, if you listened to the end of the episode, you would have heard us brainstorming about this week's topic. But we got an email from one of our listeners, and like we've said in the past, anytime we get an email, we're going to kind of push the topics that you guys want to hear about up to the front, talk about them a lot, and just have some more engagement with you guys. But our listener, April S., was kind enough to send us some, ideas on what to talk about. And one of the things that she wanted to hear that we actually thought would be pretty quick ended up turning into this. Her question was, I haven't heard you guys mention Submarine Voyage at Magic Kingdom. Did any of you ride it? It was incredible. And last week we kind of got to talk about that a little bit, and I want to say it ate up like a good 15 minutes of time. And we were like, let's just go all out this coming week and, talk about some stuff that we did experience, some stuff that we wish we got to experience, and kind of go from there. So, that said, do we want to just go down the list?
Sure.
Okay. So, first up, we have these bracketed by 10-year chunks. So, we'll go from 97 to 81. First closure that we have on here is the Mickey Mouse Revue, September 1980.
Yep. So this was an opening day attraction at Disney, and what was basically the precursor for PhilharMagic, and it's actually in the same theater that PhilharMagic is now in. But it was very similar in a lot of ways. It was kind of a collection of different Disney music put to a projection, but it also featured a very large number of animatronics, which I thought was really cool. 73 total animatronic characters in this attraction.
This one's really interesting. I've looked at this a little bit, and the idea behind it is really cool because it's very similar to like what PhilharMagic was. Mm-hmm. It's got that like the characters everyone knows, and it's a musical, so it's kind of cool in that respect. And the animatronics look really cool. I don't think I'm super sad that I missed out on this one, but it's definitely something that you can see. You can see the influence throughout the parks of this one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I will say that I think PhilharMagic does this type of attraction better than what Mickey Mouse Revue did, just based off the videos that I've seen of it, because obviously I wasn't there to see this in person. But still, it's really cool. I always appreciate when Disney does animatronics, just because I'm a huge Disney animatronic fan. So I think it would be really cool to see like a modern interpretation of that with PhilharMagic.
Yeah, that would be interesting.
Yeah, but I wonder how comparable the animatronics were to, say, the American Adventure where they don't even like line up half the time. I need to watch some videos.
A lot of these animatronics from the pictures that I'm seeing kind of look almost Small World-esque. But then there's some like the three Caballeros animatronics in the pictures on this article that you guys linked in there that actually look pretty all right.
I bet those are the same ones in Grand Fiesta Tour.
They are actually.
Are they?
It says that in the article. In 2016, Disney quietly reintroduced 3 characters from the attraction into the Walt Disney World parks. The 3 Caballeros animatronics were brought to the Grand Fiesta Tour at Epcot's Mexico Pavilion as a replacement for the end scene that previously took place on a screen.
Wow, I swear I didn't read that. I just totally took a guess. Nothing dies at Disney, right?
No, not at all. So, after that, we have the next bracket of closures, which is 1981 to 1991. First one that we have are the Plaza Swan boats.
So, these were little, exactly what they say, swan boats. And they were in the Magic Kingdom. They went around the waters near Cinderella Castle, near the Swiss Family Treehouse, and apparently passed by other attractions. I thought it was interesting that they were free-floating. They weren't on a track, so somebody was actually steering it, and they were able to go in any direction because of the way that the water jet steering system was set up. So there's not really a documented reason to why these closed, but one of the speculated reasons was that there was high maintenance costs and that the ride capacity was low, that they were unable to keep up with the demand during peak times, so that it ultimately just wasn't worth the money that they were spending to maintain the ride. But I think this sounds like really fascinating, and I really wish that I had been able to ride.
Yeah, I think it'd be cool to, be able to control yourself and not be tied down to a track.
Yeah. That's probably another reason that it closed.
Yeah,
Like ill-equipped cast members running into stuff, maybe.
Well, I know, I don't know if either of y'all have seen this, but the Phantom boats that they used to have in Disneyland were kind of like this. It sounds like that you could drive it around yourself, basically, and I think it only lasted like a year before they had to revamp the ride and put it to where a cast member actually drove you around in it. I can just imagine a lot of people driving around and not coming back and docking the boats.
Oh my gosh.
So
I can't believe they even let that be a thing.
I think if I saw correctly, I was watching a video of it a couple days ago, actually. It was like the first Disney attraction, I think, that was ever shut down.
Oh, wow.
It was an opening day one at Disneyland, and it closed like a little over a year after it opened, I think. So, interesting Disney fact for the day.
That's so weird. So after that, we had If You Had Wings, If You Could Fly, Delta DreamFlight. I'm going to let Brian take this one because it looks like you've got some thoughts.
The ride of many name changes.
Yes. I'm going to preface this by saying I understand why Disney does corporate sponsorships for a lot of their rides. It makes sense. It helps offset some of the costs, and a lot of the really cool attractions that we've gotten over the years have been in a lot of ways due to having these corporate sponsorships. Well, I think this is when it definitely goes wrong. This was a joint venture in the beginning with the opening of If You Had Wings with at the time the official airline of Disney, Eastern Airlines. So in 1987 it opened. In 1989, Eastern dropped its corporate sponsorship, so Disney decided that they had to go through and take all the mentions of Eastern Airlines, so they revamped the attraction. That lasted only a very short amount of time when Disney switched its its official corporate airline to Delta, which brought about the opening of Delta DreamFlight. Again, after running for a short amount of time, Delta dropped its corporate sponsorship of the ride, which became DreamFlight. It was closed again and opened up as a standalone attraction without any corporate sponsorship as Take Flight, before it was finally closed and became Buzz Lightyear's Space Ranger Spin. So the other big issue I have with a lot of these corporate sponsorship rides is that sometimes they can kind of take on like an advertising characteristic for that company, and this ride I think is a pretty good example of that. Is at the end of the day, it was basically a big ad for the different airline corporate sponsors to attract people to come to their companies.
Yeah, and I don't know, blatant advertising like that is just so tacky to me. You know, it's the same as when you watch a movie and somebody is very clearly drinking a can of Coca-Cola or something.
Yes.
I'm just like, really? Like, you couldn't have made it subtle.
Right. Like, and one of the good examples I think that Disney does of this, Chiquita is still the sponsor for Living with the Land, right? And there's there's like a very, very small mention. Like when you go through the greenhouse scene, there's like a Chiquita sign next to the bananas, and they say something about how like important bananas are, and like that's it. Right. I think that's a perfect example of how you can have a corporate sponsor without shoving it down guests' throats.
Yeah, the fact that we had to think about it shows how nice and subtle it is.
Right.
But on a different note, I think there are maybe a couple of other instances of like really small, subtle things that worked. Like, for example, the pipes in Dinosaur that are, you know, because it used to be sponsored by McDonald's. So the pipes in the queue, there's like a yellow one, a white one, and a red one, and they have the chemical formula painted on them for mustard, mayonnaise, and ketchup.
Oh yeah.
Which
I do like that.
It's like
one.
you would never
really
like, unless you're a Disney nerd like us, you would never know that. So and I don't really remember when it was Countdown to Extinction what the queue looked like, so it may have been more obvious that McDonald's was a sponsor, but I think at least that's the only remaining evidence of it. So you know, it can be done right. So this was just not a good example.
Well, and the reason I kind of brought this up too is it's going to come into play later with an attraction that I know we're going to spend a lot of time on. But for those of you that don't know, when Disney goes into these corporate sponsorships with companies for a specific ride, that company normally foots the bill for the maintenance of the ride. So what happens a lot of times is when the corporate sponsorships drop off, maintenance on these rides or updates and renovations on these rides almost completely stop. So we'll get into that later, I'm sure.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
So the next one we're moving into like the later territories now, which I feel like these are going to be easier to talk about because this is going to be stuff that's like very well documented. I mean, obviously there's some stuff like I want to say some of the previous iterations before Buzz Lightyear, there's some videos on, but even then they're not great quality and they're a little hard to watch. But these notable closures are from 91 to 2001. First up, we've got 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, Submarine Voyage, which is September 1994.
Yeah, so if anybody listened to the episode last week where we read the listener email and talked about doing this topic, you will have heard my story, but I'll tell it again just for those who maybe haven't listened to it, is that I actually did have the opportunity to ride this ride, and I was just too scared, and now I never will get to. So if you're scared, do the thing anyway, because that might be your only chance.
But this attraction is one that, even looking at the old ride-through videos and seeing even, just Yeah, some of the animatronics look very, very dated, but the concept of this ride is so cool, and it was so well executed, in my opinion.
I honestly wish that I did get to see this one too. This is one that when we talked about it last week, I didn't really know too much about it, but I had the chance to look some of it up like over the week, and I kind of wish that I got to experience this one.
Yeah, for sure. Remind me, Brian, did you ride this?
If I did, I would have been
tiny,
two.
Tiny.
So.
Yeah. Just say that you did. You may have, you may not, but...
Yeah, I might have. I have no memory of it, though. But just watching the ride-through videos, I think it was very cool to just, because you got in a boat that essentially had a level that was underwater and portholes that you looked out through, and the ride vehicles never actually went underwater. But the way that they... had the bubbles come up at angles to make it look like you were diving, and then how you go into a show building when you're supposed to be diving deep so that the water is dark and everything. They just did a lot of really cool little tricks to make the effects work out well.
Yeah, that's really cool.
And I don't know if any of y'all have seen the new version of this ride that's in Tokyo Disney Sea. But they came up with, I think, a very cool solution to it. The entire ride is not underwater at all. It's basically like somewhat like an Omnimover system, but you're in an enclosed compartment once you get in, and they have double pane glass with water in it, and it shoots bubbles up. But the entire ride, you're out of water. You're driving through scenes that look underwater, but it's just because there's double pane glass and bubbles in between it. They do a lot of cool effects in. So I was watching some ride through videos of that today, and I think that's a pretty cool way to have this attraction live on and not have a lot of the issues that led to it being closed down at Disney World.
Yeah, I haven't seen videos, but I've heard about it, and it just sounds like it's a great solution to all the issues that this ride had.
It's one of those things. It's like if you were to go back and show this to the Imagineers when they were coming up with the original concepts, they would have probably been like, man, that would have been a way simpler solution to this to begin with.
Right. This would have been what we should have done.
Mm-hmm.
One more reason to go to Tokyo.
I know. Everything there looks so cool.
Tokyo Disney Sea is like calling my name, but I can't pull the trigger.
I know.
It's too much.
Just like, I feel like I would need more time than I have to spend over there. Maybe one day I'll win the lottery.
So, after that one, we have Mr. Toad's Wild Ride, which that feels like it was closed a lot earlier than what it was, but that's probably because there's so much nostalgia around this attraction.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I never got to experience this one, but I know that there's a huge cult following of people making petitions trying to get them to bring it back and stuff.
I used to love this as a kid, but it's hard to justify if you go back and watch any of the ride-through videos. This might be one of the most low-tech Disney attractions that's ever been thought up.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is I feel weird about this because I think what we got in its place is significantly better. And that's where it starts to get weird for me. I know that this has a cult following, and I know that it's not one that I've ever ridden, so I can't really just base my justification off of personal experiences. But when you think about it, I'm okay for them closing this ride for the Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh, just because it's so much better.
Brian, I know you said you rode this. Was it as creepy as people imply that it was?
It's pretty creepy, and I guess they were thinking that the plot line would hopefully go over a lot of kids' heads, but it's not exactly the most family-friendly plot line ever. But yeah, it definitely had some very scary, creepy parts in it.
Yeah, this article has a funny line that I'll read. It says, in September of 1998, despite the ride's continuing popularity levels and passionate fans, Mr. Toad's Wild Ride took its final trip to hell to make way for the many adventures of Winnie the Pooh.
That's fantastic.
It's just like, how did that get by? I wonder. It's just, I mean, I guess things maybe are different now, but because that would never fly in
I don't
today's
think
park.
things are that different. That still seems like something that shouldn't have gotten past the initial drawing board, but
And that's probably one of the reasons that it has such a following is because it's so, like, un-Disney themed.
That's true, yeah.
So maybe it's just the fact that it was something kind of unique.
So one of the cool things that I think this might be part of the reason why it has a cult following, but one of the things that I was reading is that there were 2 separate tracks that you could ride on this ride.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there was a right track and a left track, and they were like almost completely different. So it's almost like you have 2 rides in one building. Still don't have the exact differences between them, but I wanted to bring that up just in case either of you have seen anything about that.
Yeah, there are 2 different tracks. I don't know the exact differences between the plots, though.
Well, according to this article, it's the different paths is like track 1, you go through Toad Hall, the trophy room, the kitchen, a gypsy camp, one-way street, town square, a pub, a keg room, blackout, rain room, train tunnel, and then end in hell. Whereas track 2, you go through Toad Hall, library, blackout, barnyard, barn, one-way street, town square, jail, prison, Shireland, train tunnel, and hell. There's a lot of words in those sentences that don't feel very Disney at all.
Yeah, not in the slightest bit. But that's still really cool that it was like almost 2 entirely different attraction experiences.
Wasn't there also a part where it looked like you were going to run into the other car? That was one of the, like,
I think that's where the train is. I think it looks like you're about to hit the train.
Oh, okay.
And I remember, even as a adult, I remember just as a kid how loud that thing was.
Oh, no. I need to watch a ride through of this.
So, next up we had Journey into Imagination, closed October of this same year. This is one I really wish I got to experience because this is another one where it's got a lot of nostalgia tied to it, and the difference between this one and Mr. Toad is that this one closed and then got significantly worse. So
significantly.
Yeah. And that's like a common thing between a lot of Disney fans is that even watching videos of Journey into Imagination, you could tell that this was like the heart and soul of this attraction. A lot of the problems that I've seen come up when talked about with this attraction is the way that they changed Figment's character and made him less of like a childlike wonder type character into more of an annoying nuisance. And I personally like don't hate Figment, and I don't particularly hate the new attraction. It's not one that I like have to do, but it's not also like, you know, Stitch's Great Escape level of awful. But I really wish that I got to experience this attraction just because I want to know what everyone really loves about, you know, Figment and all that. But I also want to talk about this building, too, because a lot of changes were seen to Journey into Imagination and the whole area as well. I don't know if you guys have looked into any of that.
I mean, I've seen remnants of it where there was, like, the rainbow tunnel and stuff that looked really cool. But again, this is something I never, like you said, I never got to experience the original one, which is also very sad for me. I am a huge Figment fan, and it has nothing to do with this ride. It's the comics that I'm a really big fan of. And I actually had a really hard time when I was reading them. I was trying to put that out of my mind so that I wasn't reading his voice in the comics. And I was just like,
Gosh.
let me make this Figment the Figment that I actually care about. So, and in the comics also have Dreamfinder as one of the other main character other than Figment. So I hate that he's not in the ride anymore.
Yeah, he did kind of die along with the attraction. But the thing that, like, with the whole show building is that ImageWorks area was actually upstairs, if I remember what I read correctly, because obviously I wasn't around for this. And it was a little bit more interactive and a little bit more, like, detailed than what it is now. So I really wish I got to see that too, because the idea of having something outside of the attraction is super cool. And throwing it back a little bit further with the Journey into Imagination stuff, there also used to be a Dreamfinder and Figment that you could, like, meet in the parks as well. Mm-hmm. And even for the time, like, they looked really good.
Yeah, no, I've seen pictures and, like, I guess it's like a puppet that Figment, like the Figment that they had.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But, like, Dreamfinder's costume is so, like, legit and cool, and the puppet was really cool and detailed and didn't look tacky at all like the ride is now. I really wish I had gotten to experience that. But talking about the building, how you were saying, like, you said ImageWorks, right? Is that the place now that's, like, looks extremely dated and has, like, really old computers where you can make your own Figment?
Yeah.
It's just, like, so sad. It just looks like a old children's museum room or something.
Yeah.
It's like,
That's the thing, is, like, there's a couple things in there that you have the thing where you can move your arms and conduct the music, and, like, you said the computers where you can make your own Figment and all that stuff, but it's not, like, groundbreaking in the same way that, like, this was for the time.
Mm-hmm. And I hate that I think the exterior of this building is probably the coolest one at Epcot, and it houses my absolute least favorite attraction on Disney property.
Yeah.
big bummer.
So, real quick, is we were talking about, like, you know, how they reuse animatronics, I believe, and I could be wrong on this one because I haven't had a chance to look it up, but I remember hearing somewhere that they reused some of the Figments in this ride. Do you guys know about that? Mm-mm. Or am I off on that? Or maybe I'm wrong, but...
No, you could be right. I don't particularly know anything specifically about it, but I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, someone, if you know anything about that, please let us know, because I'm curious. And it wouldn't be hard because there's so many of them.
Yeah, I was also, like, just reading through, like, a page about this attraction, and it says that the final scene actually involved, like, an on-ride photo. And I think that is really interesting, and I don't know why they would have just removed that completely. The technology was already there. But
I guess you could take a photo right when he sprays you with that skunk smell. That would be an interesting one.
Yeah, interesting for sure.
Everybody making that, like, grossed out face. So let's move on.
I was just gonna say, I think pretty much the only cool effect in that ride is the butterfly thing, where it, like, disappears, and even that's just like a mirror trick, you know?
Yeah.
So, but I think there's kind of been a lot of outcry about this, so maybe with the upgrades that Epcot's getting, we'll get a little something here, but I'm not holding my breath.
Yeah.
Unlikely, but we'll see.
We can hope.
Yeah.
So we should move on to the next one, which is Horizons. This is another one that gets a lot of love.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
another one I really wish that I had gotten to experience.
So this is another one you can find a lot of ride-through videos on, and I watched a couple before we started recording this because I wanted to, like, go through some of the stuff that I knew I wanted to talk about. And we mentioned this before, I want to say last week when we were talking about this stuff. This is, like, the next version of Carousel Progress, and it's totally true in, like, every way.
Yes.
And I think for us and how much we all love that attraction, it's definitely one that I really wish that we got to experience because I feel like we would all really enjoy this one.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
You can definitely tell it has that that insightful and hopeful look that Carousel of Progress has to it. And it's one of those rides that you can, like, the way Epcot turned out to be instead of what, Walt had envisioned it to be, you can kind of think maybe he wouldn't have been happy, but, like, he would have liked this ride just because of the message it sent.
Have you guys ever heard of Hoot Gibson and Chief? The guys that went into Horizons before it closed? No. Okay, we'll have to link this in the show notes. This is one of the reasons that I really wish that I had gotten to experience Horizons. But basically, the short version is that these two guys that lived in the Orlando area, or at least in Florida, they were big Disney fans, they were best friends, and they loved Horizons. And when they heard that it was closing, this was like, I guess, what year did it close again? I think this was the first, when they heard it was closing the first time around, back in 94. It's like, the internet wasn't a big thing. They're like, well, we can't just let this attraction die without people, without documenting it, without people, knowing about it. And also, this is an attraction we love, so we're going to totally, I guess, not break into it, but go where they weren't supposed to go. So they have a blog that they, I guess, uploaded after the statute of limitations or whatever, called the Mesa Verde Times. And it's basically them talking about how they basically jumped out of the ride vehicle at a particular spot where they wouldn't get noticed, and we're just crawling around and walking around behind the scenes, and there's tons of pictures and different stories about the stuff that they found, and it's really fascinating. It's very early urban exploration.
That's pretty cool.
I'm looking at this now. It's very weird.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Weird to say the least, but it's definitely along the lines of what we were talking about with Discovery Island. Mm-hmm. So it's definitely something to check out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but Horizons is the other one that I was alluding to earlier about kind of corporate sponsorship being at least a part of its downfall. GE was the original corporate sponsor for this, and after their contract ran out, they didn't renew it. And shortly thereafter, after maintenance issues started becoming more and more apparent, Disney shut it down. And then, I don't know if y'all have heard of this, but apparently it was confirmed by Marty Sklar that another reason why it was never open was that they found out that there is a developing sinkhole underneath this attraction that had to be, I guess, filled or whatever before the new show building was put in. So that was another reason why it was never resurrected.
Wow.
Well, and kind of like you said, with the corporate sponsorship thing, that's a lot of Epcot's downfall, in a way. If you look at a lot of attractions, even none of this is on our list, but Wonders of Life, the entire pavilion, a lot of the reason that went down was because MetLife doesn't sponsor it. Mm-hmm. And it's a funny thing to think about because, Disney makes how much money in a year, and obviously, there's some stuff that they could do, but without that corporate sponsorship, without that, upkeep, it's hard to maintain a lot of these attractions. And unfortunately, even if they try, in the instance of Wonders of Life, they tried for 6 years without MetLife, and it just wasn't happening.
Mm-hmm.
So, after that, we've got Discovery River boats.
Yeah, so this one was one that I actually didn't know about until I started researching extinct attractions, but it's kind of like the Swan boats that we were talking about earlier. This was an opening day attraction at Animal Kingdom, and the original intention of it was going to be a part of Beastly Kingdom, so you would be on the boat and you would encounter a dragon and a unicorn and the kraken, and it would be kind of more like a mixture, like a fantastical version of Jungle Cruise essentially. But obviously Beastly Kingdom never happened, and they wanted to open this anyway, so they were like, we'll upgrade it later kind of thing, and then just never did. So it closed less than a year and a half after Animal Kingdom first opened, and part of it was because of the disappointment from guests thinking that they were going to get that kind of fantastical Jungle Cruise attraction, and it was just basically like riding the friendship boats in Epcot, where it's just a mode of transportation. Plus the fact that there were, the lines were really long because the capacity was so low, and they tried to do a couple of things to make it more interesting, like putting cast members with little, like, small animals to talk about and, like, let guests touch and see or whatever. They added the animatronic iguanodon from Dinosaur to one of the scenes, and actually rethemed it. I don't know why they thought this was going to save it, but they rethemed it to the Radio Disney cruise and had Radio Disney DJs like playing over the speakers while you were riding. But ultimately, this attraction just had too many problems and closed in August of 1999.
Mm-hmm. So have either of y'all been on this one?
Nope.
I remember this one as a kid. I probably only rode it once, really, due to the short time it was open. But yeah, I think underwhelming is a nice way to put it.
It doesn't seem like it would be overly exciting, and it's one of those things that it's interesting in the context of like what they did to try to save it. But outside of that, I don't think I would really be excited for anything beyond that.
Yeah, and once Beastly Kingdom got scrapped, I think this ride should have just gotten scrapped along with it. Mm-hmm. They tried too hard to make it work.
Yeah, definitely. It's just, it just seemed like it was doomed to fail from the beginning.
So after that, we've got the Skyway, which closed in November 9th, 1999.
Did you ever get to ride this, Brian?
Yes. Now, this one I actually have pretty distinct memories of. Mostly because I was terrified of going on this when I was a kid, but I do remember riding it, yes.
Yeah, I think I would be pretty terrified too, especially with all the accidents that happened with people.
Mm-hmm.
Not that I'm sure Disney tried to keep that under wraps so that people wouldn't be scared, but yeah, I think it was probably for the best that they ended up shutting this one down.
Yeah, and not just because of my fear of heights, but also I think it kind of messed up a lot of the theming across the park when you can look up from almost any land and see these running. Mm-hmm. Kind of killed the immersion.
Yeah, which is my fear for the Skyliner.
Yes.
But I think this time around they'll probably try to do better.
We can hope.
This one will be fun. The next two that we have fall in the bracket of 2001 to 2011. And we've got, first up, Extraterrestrial Alien Encounter, which, if you go back on any episode that we've talked about Stitch, I always bring this up. So you all know that I have feelings about this one. I never got to ride this, and I kind of wish I did, though I know as a kid this would have scared me horribly. Probably even up until it closed. But I wish that I got to experience this one because it's such a weird attraction for Disney.
It really is.
That's the thing that I think we can talk about to death with this is like, if you look at the history behind this one, it's basically like Alien from the movie Alien, like a xenomorph. And to have something that terrifying in in Magic Kingdom is so crazy that this even got like the green light to go ahead and open. But essentially it was a very similar attraction to Stitch's Great Escape from my understanding, in the sense that your whole thing is that they're demonstrating, I can't remember exactly what it is. I've watched ride-through videos, but I never experienced it, so maybe one of you can clarify. But they're demonstrating some kind of like teleportation technology.
Yep.
And they accidentally teleport an alien into the room that is basically trying to eat everyone.
Right.
And it from even just that description, it's super terrifying. The effects made it even worse because the entire ride was in the dark, much like Stitch. And it wasn't like this cute and cuddly blue thing that everybody already loved.
Right.
Which I think is, interesting. The times that I've been on Stitch's Great Escape, I'm not trying to be mean, but the kids that get scared, I'm like, it's Stitch, come on. Go back in time and ride this. Then you actually can be scared. Because I remember riding this as a kid and I was terrified.
And I think that's a good thing to point out, but at the same time, it's also like slightly justifiable because I think it's more the dark. Like, you don't know what's really going on in that theater, and a lot of it's like the effects and everything going on around you. It's very much like a playing on your senses type deal. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what made both of these attractions like at least decently scary.
Well, I think the other thing about this that probably scared kids so bad is that the harness thing comes down and locks you in.
Right.
As a kid, you're like, man, there's no way out of this. Even as a parent, if you have a kid that gets scared, if you take a kid to a movie or something and he gets scared, what do? You just take him out, right? Like, you can't even do that here. You kind of have to, suck it up through the whole thing, which, man, what a one to have to suck it up through.
Yeah, but at the same time, that could be said for pretty much any attraction at Disney. If your kid gets on a roller coaster, it's not like you can jump off halfway through and they get scared.
True.
But
well, and here's the funny thing about that, like, Extraterrestrial had the signs that said, hey, this ride is going to be scary, this is a terrifying attraction, it's not made for young kids. And I think where it differs between this and Stitch's Great Escape is that, going into Stitch, you're going to think it's Stitch. It's a lovable character. But it's that same ride system, the same, like, harness system, like Brian said, and all of that. It's like, I almost want to say that it's a little less of a warning that this might actually be terrifying to some kids. And that's why Stitch's Great Escape is such a weird attraction to me, too. Like, I can't think of any time that I've gone in that room and, like, not heard a kid scream.
Yeah. All right. So our next one is Honey, I Shrunk the Audience, which closed in May 2010. This was in the theater where the Pixar Short Film Festival is now, if that's still what's there. I'm not totally sure.
So.
But basically, the title says it all. It was basically It's Tough to Be a Bug, but Honey, I Shrunk the Kids themed, which I remember. Like, I remember writing this and thinking that it was really cool and really scary at the same time. Just like with the different effects, they have like the rats crawling under the seats, and they have like the little brushes that brush against your ankles or whatever, and I just remember this feeling so realistic as a kid. And it's a very fond memory for me.
Yeah. I definitely remember this one too, but at the same time, it's like how many of these, and I hate this term, but 4D theaters, can you really have spread out across the parks?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think this one had the benefit of being one of the first, if not the first, right?
I believe so. I can't think of any before it.
Trying to think. So, because it opened in 1994. I can't imagine. I'm going through the ones in the parks currently, and none of them were open before. So unless there's one I've never heard of, I think this was the first. But I do think that I was surprised when I was looking it up that it closed in 2010. I felt like it closed way longer ago than that.
I was about to say that same thing.
Yeah.
I don't remember going on any of my fairly recent trips in that time period, so...
I actually do not remember going on it, but I remember it being there and wondering when it was going to close, so that feels about right to me.
I think that, this is kind of another one that's a lost to time, because, the whole Honey, I Shrunk the Kids thing is kind of, dated at this point, and they were getting rid of all the other stuff related to it, like the movie set adventure and stuff like that.
Yeah, I remember seeing this as a kid just because I was a kid when it came out, but I don't feel like it has that lasting, holding power throughout these years, and Disney gave it basically 2 attractions. It's kind of weird.
Yeah, for sure. I'm absolutely shocked that it lasted as long as it did. Almost 20 years.
It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, seriously.
I don't know. I feel really weird about that one.
I want to see the numbers between the amount of people that went to Disney and went on this attraction to the number of people that saw Honey, I Shrunk the Kids in theaters. I feel like that number's got to be kind of close.
Yeah.
So after that, we've got our bracket that I feel like we're going to have a lot to talk about, even though we're kind of running out of time. These are the recent ones, so 2011 to present day. And we can start it off with Snow White's Scary Adventure.
Yeah, so this closed in 2012. I remember this as a kid, and again, this is that kind of along the same lines, not to the same extent, but of Alien Encounter, but this was legitimately scary, especially for a kid. Like, the evil queen in this is pretty terrifying, and I don't know if y'all remember going on this, but like that part where she is looking in the mirror and she turns around and she's like transformed, that was a legitimately scary part.
Yeah, I remember the first time that we went to Disney, everyone in our party wanted to go on this, and I stayed off of it with my grandma because I did not want to go on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's so weird to think about, like, Snow White in a scary attraction, or any princess in a scary attraction for that matter.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I had the benefit of the only time I remember riding this, I was an adult, so it wasn't very scary. But I do think that it was, pretty well done, at least. But yeah. I don't remember that specific scene that you're talking about, so I need to go back and watch a ride through.
So after that one, we've got Studio Backlot Tour. Man, I hate thinking about the fact that this is closed.
Oh God,
like, this is what I'm still super sad about.
Yeah, same. I'm just like, I'm a huge nerd for like movie and TV memorabilia. To me, like, the tour, the Backlot tour itself was, pretty cool with Catastrophe Canyon and everything. But to me, the best part was always the props that you got to look at afterwards, or like in the queue and stuff.
Where you walked by them and it was like in the cages and all that, and you could see like the different props from different movies. That was really cool.
Yeah, and just like I remember, it was probably one of the last times I actually got to ride it, but I don't know if you got, this is like a really, this is, when we do that episode about Disney guilty pleasures, I actually just thought of one, and I'm going to spoil it because it's relevant. But I was really excited because the chicken coop from the Hannah Montana movie was in the queue for this, and as soon as I saw it from a distance, and I got so excited and took a picture with it. But it was just things like that were really exciting for me, and walking through I don't remember the name of the building afterwards, but they had like recent movie props, like there was like the White Witch's sleigh from the Narnia movies, and like the Queen of Hearts costume from the live action Alice in Wonderland and stuff like that. It was so cool, and I am so sad that this is gone.
You know what's really weird? Like, you're talking about that now, and I very distinctly remember the chicken coop from the Hannah Montana movie being there, but not because, like, I cared about it or anything, but I remember walking by it and going, why is that here? So two totally different reactions to that.
Well, Hannah Montana is Disney, Mario.
Yeah, but a chicken coop? Like, that's such an odd thing to have from the Hannah Montana
It's a piece
movie.
of Disney history. How dare you?
I mean, realistically, that's like the only thing from that movie that they could probably put in that would be recognizable. So maybe that's why.
I guess I just didn't watch the Hannah Montana movie.
You should. It's actually surprisingly good. I have it on DVD.
Have I swear I've told you guys my story about the Backlot tour and the last time I rode on it, right? Or was about to ride on it, right?
I don't remember. Tell it again.
Okay, so my 21st birthday trip, we went down, we're in line for it, and like this was one of my favorite attractions in Hollywood Studios. Like, I loved the Backlot tour, and I convinced my friends to go on it even though the wait time was horrendous. We get up front, we get to the top of the line, and they're going through to pick volunteers for the pre-show. So I had never actually done the pre-show. I was never involved in it before that. And they saw that I was wearing my birthday pin, and they saw my friends that were with me, and they're like, how many people are in your party? We said that there's 3 of us. We get all suited up and everything, and it's us and like one other person, I think. But we get entirely suited up, and a thunderstorm rolls right overhead.
No.
And it was our last day in the parks. So they told us to come back tomorrow when it would be reopened, but of course we weren't going to be there. So I never got to ride it again, and that's the time that I got like this close to being on the pre-show.
That's such a bummer. I actually, one time when I rode it, I was there with 3 friends, and it was, I guess, like a really weirdly slow time of year because there was absolutely no line. We literally just walked right up and were the only people in line for like 5 or 10 minutes. And because we were the first people in line, the cast member was like, you guys want to be the, volunteers for the pre-show? And I don't know what was going through my head, but I was like, no, you guys do it, and I'll take a bunch of pictures of you doing it. And I don't know, maybe I was being like a martyr or something, but I really regret that. I did get some really good pictures of my friends, though, so that was pretty cool. But I really wish that I had gotten to actually be in it.
As awful as this sounds, like when they said, oh, a thunderstorm is rolling over, because they told us twice. They told us the first time, they're like, we're probably going to have to shut it down, but we still want to get you all suited up and everything, just in case. So we did, and the lady was like, yeah, we're going to have to cancel it because, it's getting really close. And part of me was like, man, this would just be the way that I want to go out. Like, let this be it. If I have to die, this is how I want to go.
Yeah, man. As much as I, wish that I had done it, one of my friends, she was the one that's, in the room with the telephone, I guess. And they told her over and over again, don't look look left, don't look right at all, or whatever direction the water was going to come from. And she just got totally she didn't look, but you could still see the water smack her in the head, And at that point, I was like, well, I'm really glad that I didn't get picked for that role, at least, if I had volunteered.
That is very fair. So after Backlot Tour, we have Maelstrom, which closed October 5th, 2014. I missed this ride a lot.
Yeah, I liked it.
Not even gonna lie. This is one that, like, it's so, like, you could go back and watch it, but it's dated. It definitely, you could see why they wanted to replace it with Frozen, but I would still love to ride this if it was open today.
Yeah, for me, like, Frozen Ever After is a pretty good attraction. Like, I'm mostly bitter because it replaced Maelstrom, but I also am kind of bitter at Frozen Ever After because I feel like it was kind of the beginning of the end. Like, that's when Epcot started becoming, IP-cot. I think that was kind of the first one, was it not?
Well, technically, the first IP that I remember in there was Grand Fiesta, but no one really cares about that.
Yeah, plus, I don't know. I guess I feel like because it's like the Three Caballeros are like classic characters, it felt like less of a cash grab. Because, I don't know, Frozen fever was very rampant. I guess it still is, but I don't know. To me, it felt a little forced. I know that, Arendelle is a Norway-esque type of country, but the fact that it's not actually Norway bothers me.
Yeah.
All right. I'm just going to play devil's advocate on this one.
Go for it.
Okay, I don't think I enjoyed Maelstrom as much as apparently both of y'all and everybody on social media did when it got shut down. But I don't know. I feel like Norway's got to be near the bottom of everybody's list of the countries in World Showcase.
That's probably true.
Even with Maelstrom, like, I don't think that many people were stopping in Norway. They needed to do something to bring it in. Now, I'm not necessarily saying putting Frozen in there was the right solution to that, but I kind of feel like something needed to be done. And at least they put something in there that they knew was going to draw people into the pavilion.
And I 100% agree with that, actually. Mm-hmm. I know that, like, I loved Maelstrom, but I loved Maelstrom for a different reason than most people did. Like, this was a ride that we did on almost every family trip, which is a weird one. But that's why I have nostalgia for it. And I think that you're right. This did need to be replaced with something. Mm-hmm. And putting Frozen there was just kind of a no-brainer.
Yeah. I'll say if as many people that got all up in arms about this when they said they were shutting it down rode that ride regularly, it would have never gotten shut down.
Oh, yeah.
I similar to what Mario was saying, my love for Maelstrom is, I would say, at least 90% nostalgia. I'm sure if I went back and, if it still existed and I went back and rode it, I would be like, I mean, it's not, like, bad, but it's not like, I don't think it was, I mean, it was very far from an e-ticket attraction, I'll say that much. Yeah. But I have very few, like, really vivid memories of attractions from Disney World as a kid, and this is one of them, so I feel like that plays a lot into my opinion of it. But and like I said earlier, I feel like if Frozen was genuinely set in Norway, it would bother me a lot less. But true. I don't know, maybe that's like a really nitpicky thing, but I don't know.
Yeah, and that's the thing, like, there are definitely scenes in that attraction that are super outdated. Like, the best part of that attraction was when the trolls pop up and you go backwards. Mm-hmm. But spoiler, that's in Frozen. It's just not the trolls. Yeah. But after that, we have Dream Along with Mickey, which is the Castle Stage Show. I missed this for the song. That's it.
Aww. I mean, see, I guess, again, going back to nostalgia, this was one that I loved because I saw it on pretty much every trip that I went on. But I really like the song, but completely speaking, like trying to take a step back and look at it objectively, Mickey's Royal Friendship Fair is way better. So, and it was a good transition because, you know, Dream Along had the OG princesses, Snow White, Cinderella, and Aurora, and they did need to make it more relevant to the younger, like, upcoming generation of Disney fans, I think.
I think I 100% agree with that. The only reason I really like enjoyed Dream Along with Mickey was because that song that always played, the Castle Party song, would always get stuck in my head. And that was pretty much it.
But now the Royal Friendship Fair song gets stuck in my head, so it's a good replacement.
I don't know. I haven't stopped to watch it that much.
Oh, it's really cute. I'm a big Princess and the Frog fan, though, so I'm biased.
I have a lot of pictures of this show, and I really did enjoy it, but I think that was a one and done for me.
Yeah.
And after that, we've got Animation Academy, July 2015.
Yeah, I think we got a little bit out of order, which is probably my fault, not putting the right date, like putting it in the right spot, but whatever. It's all in the same time frame. But did you guys ever do this? I know that you can still do it at like Art of Animation Resort, but
well, it's not a dedicated building anymore.
Right.
I did it once.
I loved it. I thought this was great. It made me feel like an artist. Like I'm not the only kind of hands-on type of art that I'm, you know, relatively decent at is like the Adobe Creative Suite and photography. So the fact that this was like, here's a paper and here's a pencil, we're going to teach you how to draw Goofy, and then you're done and you're like, oh my god, this actually looks like Goofy. Like, this isn't like a dumb little kid picture. Like, I did it. That was just really exciting for me as someone who's not I guess, physical artist.
Yeah. I don't know. This is one that, like, I feel like was so out of the way that it makes sense as to why it's closed, because the placement on this one was really weird. And I don't know, there were a lot of things that were stacked against this one too.
Yeah, and kind of on the same vein, did you guys ever go in that building when they had the like actual animators in it?
Mm-mm.
No, but I know about that.
Yeah, so for anybody listening that maybe doesn't know, this is where Star Wars Launch Bay is now, and it used to be the animation courtyard. The building was called the Magic of Disney Animation, and basically had like actual animators drawing stuff that, like when you walk in, are there still those? I guess there's probably like Star Wars props in those glass rooms now.
I don't know. I haven't been in Launch Bay.
Well, I'm thinking that they're still they're like glass rooms that they actually used to be offices, and there would be animators drawing in those. And if I'm not mistaken, there were scenes for, here we go. These were some of the things that were animated there. Scenes, the ink and paint for The Little Mermaid, 2 of the 3 Who Framed Roger Rabbit spin-off cartoons, the Be Our Guest sequence from Beauty and the Beast, Mulan, I Just Can't Wait to Be King sequence from The Lion King. It's like big ticket stuff, and people got to actually watch animators drawing that, and I really regret that this isn't something that people still get to do. And I know that hand animation is, you know, pretty rare these days, as far, at least in the Disney realm, but I just think that's such a lost art that people don't appreciate.
Yeah, it definitely is, and I like what this was, but I know why it closed, I think, still.
Yeah, and I agree. Like, especially like with the direction that Hollywood Studios is taking now, where it's genuinely supposed to put you in the movies instead of putting you behind the scenes of the movies like it kind of used to be. So I understand why it closed. I don't know. I think that it's an art that is very underappreciated.
Yeah.
But
so after that, we've got Captain EO, which is another attraction that got a ton of love all over social media, and I never experienced once.
I didn't
I don't think
either.
I did either.
Wow, that's weird. I thought that you both were gonna hate on me for that.
Well, I mean, it closed in '94 the first time, and when they reopened it, it only ran for a year or so, maybe, right? So,
But I feel like everyone ran to it in that year because I remember when that was back, and it was it was a big thing that everybody was like, "Oh, Captain EO, Captain EO."
Well, it was also because Michael Jackson had died recently.
uh-huh.
Yeah, that's true.
But the reason that I never made this a priority is because it's an actual movie and I could watch it anytime and have pretty much the same experience. So I felt like that was valuable park time being spent that could have been spent elsewhere.
But the 4D.
God, I hate that term so much. But yeah, I was gonna say I believe I have heard this somewhere. I'm not sure if it's completely true, but up until a couple years ago, and I'm thinking it was actually with Avatar, but this was the adjusting for inflation, obviously, but it was the most expensive per runtime film that was ever made.
I would believe that, though.
Because it cost $30 million to make, and it only lasted less than a half hour. So,
Wow.
Yeah.
but yeah, I guess starring Michael Jackson, produced by George Lucas. It's a lot of expense just right there. And then I remember something about they had to reshoot almost the entire thing, I'm wanting to say, for some reason. But anyways, there was my Disney fun fact that I'm not even sure if it's true or not. So
Well, it's a fun one. I hope it is true.
So this next one I have a lot of strong feelings about, and you might all have to stop me from going on a roll with this one.
Yeah.
But this next one is the Osborne family of Spectacle of Lights. I miss this so much, and I am so sad that this is gone.
Yeah.
This was our family tradition was to go to Hollywood Studios, see the Osborne lights and everything. And I was actually there the year that they closed, but I was stupid and didn't go see them. And I really regret that. That's my biggest Disney regret. But for those of you that don't know what this was, which it would be sad if you didn't, it was a section of Streets of America that was lit up with Christmas lights, and they were all synced to Christmas music. And even just saying lit up with Christmas lights is not doing it justice, because literally everywhere you looked there were tons of lights, and it was just a super, for lack of a better word, magical experience.
Yeah, that is the epitome of magic, in my opinion.
yeah.
It's so awesome.
I actually only saw this once, and it was for the last year that they ran it, and I'm so glad that I did, because it really is. It's indescribable just how beautiful and just emotional the whole thing is. It's incredible, and I can only hope that something comes back once Hollywood Studios is done with all this refurbishment.
Right.
Well, and here's the thing that I think is really odd about all of this is this is an easy one to look past. As much attention as this got in the last couple, months it was open, and if you notice, looking back at a lot of these things, they really gained their traction in the last couple months that they were open. But this was super easy to miss because it wasn't in an attraction building. It was just a chunk of street that was just there. And for a lot of people, you see them and you're just like, oh, that's just Christmas lights. But, you walk inside, you stand in the middle of all that, and that's just like a breathtaking experience. And I don't know how anybody could see this and not want to experience it, but at the same time, from the perspective of maybe this is like a once in a lifetime trip, or you've got only so much time in Hollywood studios, like I can see why people would miss this at the same time. And unfortunately, we're moving away from a lot of that streetmosphere and a lot of the general theme stuff in the streets. So this I see why Disney pulled the plug, for lack of a better term, on this one.
Yeah, and I know there have been rumors that they're supposed to be bringing this to Disney Springs in the future, which I think would be awesome. But again, like everything else, not going to hold my breath because, why spend all the money to power these lights for a place that you don't have to pay to get into, is the Disney mindset.
Yeah, and I also think that the downside to that is, like you said, there's a lot of costs that go into factor, but I don't ever see this coming back. I don't see anything in any respects being even near this. I know for a while there was a rumor that they were going to do like a prize for that great light fight that they were doing was going to take over this, but I don't think any iteration that Disney can do is going to be the same.
It's like, can they give the lights back to the Osborne family and let them decorate their house again?
Well, for those of you that don't know, the whole reason that they had to move them was because that display just got too out of hand to be just on the streets. So like there's a nice little story behind it. I'm not going to go too far into it because we're really pushing time here. I will try to find something and link it in the show notes, but even just reading about how they ended up in Disney is a really heartwarming thing. Okay, so the next one on our list is Soarin' over California, which was June 2016. The thing about this one, and I hate to say this because I've voiced my opinion on New Soarin', is the biggest thing with this is that the taking away the old video totally ruined this ride for me. So this isn't technically an extinct attraction. This attraction got a refurb with a different video, and it really changed the entire theme of things, I guess.
It may not be dead, but it's dead to me.
Yeah, that is the best way to put it.
It's just, I don't know. It's just so heartwarming, like make you feel good. Got the good smells, the oranges and the pine trees. And now it's like, hey, here's a bunch of CG and some dirt smell.
Yeah. And like before I always thought, like, man, why is it over California? And then why do we end up at Disneyland? And now I'm like, man,
Bring it
I know,
back.
I'm so sorry. I won't complain anymore.
That's probably why they took it away, Brian, is because you had that thought.
Yeah.
My least favorite thing about Soarin' over the world, or whatever it is the lens blur. Oh my god, does the lens blur kill me? Because there are things in that attraction that should be straight, but they're not straight. But I'm not going to go into bashing that attraction too much because I've done it enough on previous episodes. So after that, we've got Main Street Electrical Parade, which I am very sad about. I don't know if you guys feel anything about this one.
Yeah, definitely.
At least I can always hope that, I mean, you see how the parades kind of exist over the lifetime of Disney. A lot of times they'll get replaced and then move to another park, and then they get brought back, and that's happened multiple times with Main Street Electrical Parade. So I'm just got my fingers crossed that it's, just in hibernation, that it's coming back.
My biggest thing with this one is they closed it without anything to replace it. And I think that's a lot of the reason I'm very upset about this one, is that, like, come on, Disney, just give us something. Like, put another nighttime parade in here. Put something here to just, replace something that's missing, and I think I would be a little bit more okay with it. But now I think it's a weird time for the nighttime in the Magic Kingdom, because with Happily Ever After and all that, they crammed all of the different kinds of nighttime entertainment into one thing, and there's really not a lot of time for a nighttime parade per se. So I don't know if we'll get anything, but I'm kind of losing hope that we will.
Yeah, I'm on the same boat as Brian, where I hope that it's just in hibernation and Disney's just got it packed up in storage. Like, let's wait until they kind of forget about it for a while and then bring it back so everybody comes and spends a bunch of money on merchandise. I would actually be okay with this.
I would actually buy all the merchandise for this. So in the same vein, we've got Wishes, which I'm super sad that Kirsten's not here, but let's just take 10 minutes to assume that she's yelling about Wishes somewhere.
Yeah. I've said this on previous shows. Happily Ever After I think it's a good show. I'm not going to bash it because it replaced Wishes, because it's not Happily Ever After's fault. But it is at the same time. It does not have the same, like, nostalgia, warm and fuzzy appeal that Wishes did. And I think that that's something that is really lacking, like, obviously lacking. It's just, I don't know. Wishes just had that vibe to it, and Happily Ever After, as good as it is, like, with the technical aspects of it, just doesn't hold up in the same way.
I think I've talked about my reasons for really loving Wishes in comparison to Happily Ever After. Now, granted, I'm going to say this again, still haven't seen Happily Ever After. But a lot of the reason that I think Wishes soundtrack holds up where Happily Ever's doesn't is the fact that while it is kind of similar in the respect that they used pre-existing Disney songs, the fact that it was like a montage or a medley of Disney songs in a way that it wasn't just like they were smacked together one after the next one. It was still its own unique soundtrack, and that's something that's really, really good to have in a show. My thing with Happily Ever After is that I think there's the one new song that they wrote specifically for it that's like 3 seconds long. And then everything else after that is just pretty much scenes from the movies. So that's my gripe with it. But I love Wishes. I have very, very strong feelings for Wishes. I also have very strong feelings for Celebrate the Magic as well. So I'm not going to dive into all of that, but I really miss Wishes.
R.I.P.
I still listen to the soundtrack, and like I said, somewhere out there, Kirsten's screaming about Wishes to someone. So, do you have any thoughts on that, Brian? Or did you?
I mean, y'all summed it up. I loved Wishes. It's hard for me to imagine anything replacing it that would be better than it. So, kind of just all the points y'all touched on.
So our last one, and we've kind of talked about this one a little bit on the show, especially our Hollywood Studios tribute. I almost forgot that we did that. But the last one is the Great Movie Ride, which closed August 13th, 2017. Do you guys have anything you want to say about this one? Because this is another one I can go on a tirade about.
Yeah, I've said it before, but I'll say it again. I think that this ride could have been so easily salvaged just by updating the movies that were referenced. And they could have done so much with it. And it just, I don't know. There was a point, I don't know when it started, but it just kind of started going further and further downhill, and the cast members stopped caring about their roles as much, I think. And the crowds got younger and had no idea what any of the movies were. And then they just had to tie it all in with that film at the end where they threw in scenes from Pirates of the Caribbean and stuff, just to try and make it somewhat relevant.
I think one of the things that, this has been brought up a couple times on this episode, but corporate sponsorship really took its toll on this one too. And not in the same way that like Epcot's did, but you had a bunch of different sponsors that came through here where it was like MGM, Turner Classic Movies. Like there were so many different people involved in the rights to these movies and the scenes that were depicted, but like it's very weird to think that they could have updated it or they could have added anything else, because then they would have to get someone else involved, and it's really a lot of contractual work, and I think it would have been a lot harder for Disney to update it than we think it would have been.
Yeah, and I guess part of the problem was the fact that the sponsor for a long time was Turner Classic Movies, because like why would they want to promote recent movies? They're all about the classics.
I mean, even though it might seem like just a big ad for Disney, I think it would have been cooler and more long-lasting if it would have just focused on classic Disney attractions. Because, I mean, I still feel like kids nowadays watch those. I don't think anyone under the age of 10 has seen Casablanca,
I've never seen Casablanca.
I haven't either, so I have to feel like...
I'm a little older than 10.
Yeah, the kids these days are even further removed from that, so...
Well, I actually thought you were going to say that it would have been better if they just made it the Great Muppet Movie Ride.
It definitely would have been.
Absolutely.
Because we've talked about that one, and that still blows me away. But the thing that I do have to say about this one is the way that things are shaping up for the Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railroad. I'm kind of excited for that.
I am too.
Yeah, I definitely am. I think I've said it on here before, and I don't say this about a lot of attractions, but I absolutely hated the Great Movie Ride, so the fact that it's getting replaced, and it's getting replaced with something Mickey, is cool in my book, so I have no complaints here.
I'm trying to think of all the different movies that were represented, and I'm off the top of my head, the only ones that I think I've actually seen are Mary Poppins and The Wizard of Oz, unless I'm missing one that's like super obvious.
And then
Alien.
Yeah, I was about to say
I have seen Alien, but yeah, I've never seen Singing in the Rain. I've never seen Footlight Parade. Like we said, I've never seen Casablanca or Public Enemy. It's just, and I'm almost 28. If I haven't even seen these movies, then kids definitely haven't, unless their parents are in their 80s.
So the one thing that I do really like about the Great Movie Ride, or that I did really like about the Great Movie Ride, first of all, that first scene with the neon theater thing, that was really cool. Just riding under that was like one of the best parts of that ride. But the fact that, one, there were live cast members narrating the attraction, and two, there was also, it was like an interactive show in a way, because you had the cowboy and the gangster scenes, and I really liked that aspect of the ride, and I wish that Disney would kind of incorporate more of that into their attractions, but I know that that's something we'll never see again.
And I completely agree. I think that was honestly what made the ride what it, like, as good as it, as big as it was, I'll say, is like how much of a following it had. But I think it also was part of the downfall, is because, I feel like when you go on Jungle Cruise, for example, I don't ever remember a time where I had a cast member that wasn't super into it. Like, even if the joke wasn't like absolutely hilarious, it was like a bad pun that people could kind of groan at, and that, the cast member would like kind of laugh at themselves. But I feel like it was so hit or miss, especially towards the end with this, whether the cast member cared at all or not, and that would just totally make or break it, the whole experience.
Yeah. So, real quick, I know we're pushing it extra close to time. Are there any ones that you guys want to give like a quick shout out to? Anything that, maybe you didn't research a lot of, but you've heard about and you kind of wish that you got to see, or, want to talk about real quick? Just as like a rapid fire aside moment.
Jungle Book Alive with Magic.
Oh. Why?
I'm just kidding.
I saw it. You didn't.
I
miss
did
anything.
too. No, I did.
Oh, okay.
That's why I made the joke.
Yeah, that was
Garbage.
That was terrible.
I don't know why anyone would want to see that. I kind of briefly mentioned it, but I really wish that I got to even see Wonders of Life in its heyday. I don't know why, but that building is super fascinating to me.
Mm-hmm.
And not because like any rides in there looked good, because really I think the only one that comes to mind when I think about that I've at least seen was Body Wars, and that's essentially just Star Tours.
It was, yeah.
But
So there's some interesting stuff with that. Anybody that wants to do a little digging about the like motion sickness and stuff that ride caused, and how Disney had to go in there and crop out part of the video to alleviate that. It's pretty interesting.
That is interesting.
so the other funny thing in there in oh my gosh, what is the Wonders of Life? That kind of interests me, and this is more of like I can't believe that that's actually a thing that was in there, is the Making of Me video that was in there.
Right?
That's a thing that I can't believe Disney, allowed to go through. But I guess if you're going to explain the body, you have to talk about reproduction too.
Oh, wow. This is the first time hearing of this.
Yeah.
You didn't know about that?
No.
Oh my gosh. I think there's videos on YouTube, but it was essentially Martin Short telling a story about how people are born.
Wow.
And not the stork version.
No. And, like, I mean, I don't think it was graphic. Like, I don't remember hearing anything bad about it, but it also talks about, like, fertilization and, like, just one of those weird things that I can't believe Disney put the green light on.
Wow. Yeah, that's, I'm gonna have to check this out.
Yeah, it was called The Making of Me, and it was just a film, so, I mean, it's not really like an attraction.
And surprisingly enough, it actually didn't close until 2007.
Yeah, I just saw that. That's crazy.
Can't believe how these things slip by for so long.
I don't know. But anything else you guys want to bring up before we tie this week to a close?
Disney, if you're listening, stop closing the good stuff.
Close Stitch's Great Escape.
Please die. Let it die.
And that's going to do it for us this week. Thanks for joining us again on another episode of the Station 71 podcast. If you like what you heard, be sure to subscribe to us on iTunes. Leave us an iTunes review as well. We'll be happy to address your questions, comments, or concerns on the show. If you want to hear us talk about anything or just get in touch with us, you can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Station71pod, or on Twitter at Station71pod, Instagram at Station71podcast, and you can shoot us an email at Station71podcast@gmail.com. We hope you enjoyed your ride, and we'll see you real soon.